cloud. Hopefully everybody sees a pop-up. And to save on bandwidth, if people could mute themselves and shut off their videos until they're ready to ask a question. I understand from Mike that he's willing to accept questions live while he's doing his presentation. So thanks a bunch, and I'll be lurking in the background. Mike, take it away.
I guess I'll do the same with the video for the bandwidth. And yeah, like Doug just said, any questions you can unmute, pop in at any point. You don't have to wait till the end. Let's keep it interactive. And it's good to see some familiar faces. Mike Roy, I don't think I've seen you in 8 or 9 years, and you look exactly the same. I thought it was an AI video when you were talking. All right, so we're going to get into, well, let me share first. Let's do that. Here we go. All right. So we're going to talk about, when you have your invention, your idea, whatever your product or brand is, what next steps look like and what options look like. Because sometimes that just means you come up with an idea and you're going to find someone else to take it for you. Other times you're going to find investors or grants or credit lines and loans. And then other times you're going to launch and grow it yourself, or potentially a hybrid, some form of all three. And again, I'm going to get into the differences, what to expect, what partners look for. I have some of these companies highlighted right here on this first page, because these are the sort of, I'll call popular licensing companies that are out there right now. And if it's kind of what we used to call the as seen on TV companies, and with, streaming and digital and everything else coming to life, I think as seen on TV is less and less of a critical phrase. But again, when it comes to companies where I've brought thousands of products to, and I also have worked, these are a handful of sort of the top guys that have taken to life a lot of the products you've seen all over TV and all over retail and things like that. All right, little about me. Okay, so I have been in the space of, again, taking products to market for probably about 20 years. Prior to that, I ran a software company. That was my actual degree. I have a master's degree in computer science. I ran a computer software development company for many years. And then over time, that evolved into a web development company. And then from web development, that became internet marketing. And then through networking, I was introduced to a company that was very popular in terms of putting products in catalogs, and they wanted to get themselves on the internet and TV. And I learned on the job how to literally shoot, produce, write TV commercials, how to set up your warehouse, your websites, get products on Amazon, present to real, retailers, everything, packaging, A to Z. And then spent many, many years, similar to Shark Tank, where inventors would come in and kind of pitch to me at all different stages. And then I would determine if it made sense for them to license with us or to keep it themselves, and so forth. Little side note for fun, when I'm not doing this, I'm very active in the music world. I've toured all over and I play piano, and I have a nice little fun following going on social media, which is probably more appropriate for your kids, because I'm assuming not too many of you are on TikTok, but knock yourselves out if you're there. Oh, wait, one more thing I want to talk about on the bottom right. This is my own personal invention. I took to market a baby wipe, but in the event that your child has a situation where a standard wet wipe was insufficient in size, I have a gigantic mitten-shaped wet wipe called Shittens. That is actually the name I took it to market with. And that thing went ridiculously viral. It's been on Howard Stern and a million different TV shows. And again, same thing. I literally had to source it, manufacture it, do wet wipe testing and all the same things you would do with anything, but then had the good fortune where this thing went super viral, and it's on Amazon. And like I said, that's been fun too. So, all right. So here's what I want to go through. Most important thing is figuring out, do you even have something? And by that, I mean, you might think you have a great idea, and your family might think you have a great idea, but it doesn't mean the masses do. And I have just hundreds of stories about inventors I've met with who have the greatest solution to a problem that isn't big enough problem to go mass market, but maybe there's a niche for it. Or maybe there's an opportunity for it, but it's just the cost to manufacture is too high relative to what people will pay for it. And there's all these kinds of things. So there are ways now to figure that out cost effectively before you go and blow all your money on something that, again, doesn't have life. So we have to look into how do we do that? Licensing, I'm going to talk about what the licensing companies actually look for. What questions do they ask? What are they looking for? Whether it's the sell sheet or whether it's the characteristics of your product or the competition, we're going to hit on that. And then the next and biggest thing is maybe I shouldn't license this thing. Should I keep it? What does that mean? You know, maybe I'm going to keep 100% of my thing and it's all mine. Or maybe that's a terrible idea because 3% of a pie that's about 7,000 times the size might still be better for you. And again, I'm going to get into that. Stop me anytime, like I said, with questions. All right. So a few things to talk about. So first with licensing, what does that look like for you? At the end of the day, what that typically means is you are turning your product, your brand, whatever it is, your solution over to another company, and this company is going to take it from here. They are going to put up 100% of the money moving forward. You're done. You can go sit back, collect your royalty checks, and work on your next thing. Obviously, since it's your invention and you're the closest to it, there's a period in the beginning where you're going to still be involved. You got to transfer all your knowledge over to these guys and make sure it's being manufactured and done the way you want it to. But the general concept is they're going to take all the risk. They have the resources, both financially. By the way, somebody want to mute there, or does somebody have a question? I'm hearing some background. Okay, thanks. So this becomes, again, do I hand this off to a company that's been doing this for a lot of years, but at the expense of the fact that I'm likely going to now maybe get somewhere in the range of 1% to 3% of gross sales, and now this isn't mine anymore. And pros and cons to that, right? Again, all the risk goes away. You're not putting up another dollar. You don't have to spend the time doing this. They are taking all of the risk from you. And by the way, if it was something like Snuggie, which did $1 billion in sales, I think 1% is pretty good. I did a product called Magic Mesh, which was kind of a screen. If you were to walk into your backyard through your sliding doors, this was a meshed door or screen that you can walk through, and it would close itself right after you walk through it with magnets. The inventor brought us the worst looking prototype ever. And by worst, I don't mean that it was bad. I just mean he did what he could do with what he had. And it was enough to tell the story. And we took it on. And within 6 to 7 years, the guy made $7 million in royalties and didn't have to do anything more of work. So sometimes, like I said, that 1 to 3%, sometimes it's a better deal. There are situations where it's closer to 5% if you have sales history and things, but I'm just giving you an average. That could still be huge money. I have plenty of other examples where people were able to get investors or self-fund or get loans or credit lines, whatever, take it on themselves. And they were able to have full control, watch the quality of everything, run it, build a company, and now they're doing great. And then years later, even get acquired. So there's not a right or a wrong. It's kind of what works for you. But I'm going to take you through. You just have to be aware when the people talk about, I want to do it myself, especially in the product world, there are many, many things you need to know, and you either have to have the right partner or employee, or you have to kind of know this stuff. So I'll get into that. All right. So on the left, the circle here, again, these are just kind of high level areas that if you're looking to take something to market, these are the things you have to have some knowledge or at least contacts in all of these areas. And if it's something, if you're going to license it, keep in mind, then this is what these guys are going to do. So the market testing, well, I'll back up. Product development, you at least ideally want to have some form of a prototype. An idea on a napkin to try to get licensed is pretty tough. They at least, most of these guys want to see a working prototype. Doesn't have to be amazing, but something that you can stick in an iPhone video and at least do a little bit of a demonstration to get kind of the idea. With that becomes market testing. Then the legal stuff, you know, can I call it what I want to call it? Do I have to change the name? Am I violating someone's patent or trademark? Am I able to trademark and patent it myself? All that kind of good stuff, and so on. Around the circle, you see all these things. And on the right in that column are common questions that I used to ask when I met with inventors. And now if I present an idea to a company that would consider licensing, I guarantee you these are the questions. These are a subset, but the most important questions they're going to hit me with right out of the gate. Starting with our USP, our unique selling proposition. Why is this better than what's already on the market? What does the competition look like? Cost of goods. Have you done any research? And listen, there's flexibility here. The rest of us inventors that are going to get a price to manufacture a product, we might find out that a product we want to sell for $40, that we think it costs us $20, which is ridiculously high, but that's because we're only buying a handful and the factories quoting us really high prices because we don't have the relationship that a licensing company or someone else does. So the licensing companies are going to look at that and they're going to take it with a grain of salt and know that if they do this with their contacts, it could be potentially, 10% of whatever your cost of goods are when you did your initial research, and so on. Do you have any inventory? Or again, are we just in a prototype phase? Is there a website? So forth. All of these are not critical that you have. You don't have to go to a company and say, I've already spent $1 million on Facebook and I have a website and I've been on home shopping. They don't expect that. But I will say the more information you have going down this list gives you more leverage when you're negotiating, obviously. Someone that's already sold the product and is fulfilling orders is going to get a much better deal than someone who comes in with a prototype and, just has a story. And that's okay, right? And then, again, bottom right, what are we looking for? How big do we think the market is? What problem are we solving? Is it unique? Affordable, and by affordable, I don't mean is it $20 versus $1,000. $1,000 could be affordable if our cost of goods are in the range of maybe 1/5 of that. That's about the sweet spot for almost any sort of cost of goods to selling price that we look for. In the range of about 5 times cost of goods is where you want to be. So what happens is sometimes we might have a cost of goods of $5, meaning we would like to sell it for $25 or more. But for whatever reason, we've done market testing and the market will only pay, $19.95 or $14.95 for it. We have a discussion that we have to have. How can we make this work? Is it credible? This one's interesting. Credible meaning you can say, I have the greatest invention ever. This thing is going to reduce, it's going to cure cancer and it's going to get rid of bed bugs. It's unbelievable. And then no one's going to believe that. So how do we justify this? Is, the market going to believe it? And then the last most important thing, is it easily explainable? Do I have to pull out a phone, pictures, and a video in order to explain this? Or can I just sit there and say, I have a blanket with sleeves? Okay, I have a device that you can work out in a fraction of the time you ever have before without leaving your house, and so forth. Those types of things are, help along with trying to look for a deal. Questions before I move on? I can't see you guys, so I'm just blurt it out if you do. All right. I'm going to show you a few examples of sales sheets that I've gotten permission to show. This is one product. It's patented. And imagine this as a 2-page PDF. And then on the right where you see those little images of the sink, those are actual videos. So this person has an invention of a brush that you fill with water. And as you brush and pump, it releases water into the hair. Let's say your child has tangled hair, and it could be anyone. It doesn't have to just be a child, as you see in the examples. This was more than enough for me to take and show someone. And then they have a link to the video, which goes to a little YouTube video that they uploaded. They got their kid in the video. This doesn't need to be highly produced. It's like a 60-second iPhone video, literally. No one cares about perfection on these things. You can do it at home for free. So just kind of an example. You don't have to have a sales sheet if you just have a video or, any form that you think, again, is going to tell the story pretty quickly. Most of us can work with that, but this is kind of a nice little best practice. And I'll show you a few other examples. Here's 3 more. These were 1-pagers that I got. So, you got a retractable leash here. You got a slipper situation. And I got this neck pillow. Again, the looks like two of these had videos. The one on the right, the last one, they didn't have a video. And that, again, it's kind of hard to tell from just that why this is the most amazing thing ever. So in that, I'm going to accompany that with an email that's got maybe 5 or 6 bullets and a little bit of an explanation. But just giving you some ideas. So this is interesting. This sort of landscape of what licensing companies or even investors used to look at in terms of how we tested the efficacy of a product has really changed. It used to be super expensive, by the way, where literally a company that was going to test to see if they should even move forward with one of your product ideas was, $100,000-$200,000 to create a website, shoot a commercial, then go spend money to air the commercial. And we made that decision. I've done tons of these. We made that decision based on sending an email around our company. We had like 60, 70 people. We'd shoot an email around and say, what do you think of this invention of this new pots and pans, which was ridiculous because we were sitting in New York, supposedly trying to guess what the rest of the country is going to like. And that's how we decided. And it was, one, it took a long time because we're shooting commercials and stuff. Two, it was a terrible way to do a focus group because, again, we have no idea what everybody else thinks. And so what we did was we started to realize that there's a lot of ways to go online. Maybe some of you guys have heard of surveymonkey.com. There's tons of others where you can very cost effectively, basically looks like you're uploading or creating a PowerPoint. So here's a picture. It's actually like a mini version of like, I'll go back. Like, imagine you just uploaded your sales sheet. And then after you upload your sales sheet to this survey platform, you then put a few questions there. Does this solve a problem that you have? Would you pay this much money for it? And you ask a bunch of questions. Have you seen anything else like it? And then an open-ended question like, what else am I missing? Is there anything else that you think should be answered with this? And what you do is, for a few $100, you can get like a few hundred people across the country in whatever demographic you think fits your product to give you feedback. It's a great way to do a focus group rather than grabbing a bunch of people, sticking them in a room, again, who all live in one part of a country that don't represent everything else. And there are dozens and dozens of products over the years before we switched the model where we said, no, we think this is a terrible idea or it's not for us. And then 3 years later, it's all over the TV and all over the world and we blew it. So we stopped trying to guess and we do the survey thing. And I'll tell you something interesting on the survey thing. I ran a product called the Clever Cutter, which was a scissor, a kitchen cutting scissor for food, where the top of the scissor was a blade and the bottom looked like a miniature cutting board. And that thing did millions and millions of dollars in sales. But the magic we learned is when we did a survey on that, many, many people wrote, it looks cool, but it looks really hard to squeeze. I find it hard to believe that I can squeeze this thing or my grandmother can use this. So that taught us that when we market this thing, because it in fact was actually very easy to squeeze, we needed to promote that in the the marketing. So you're going to love it. Your grandmother's going to love it. And then we put grandmas in the in all the ads and things like that. Okay. So now once we look at a survey, we might have noticed that some of the surveys, 90% of the people say, this looks exactly like something else I already have, or it's not for me, and we move on. And now we take the good ones. The good ones now go, we don't have to jump right to a TV test. We can go to a digital test. And what that also means is we can build a down and dirty website. Most of your kids can do this pretty cost effectively. Again, like literally for a few $100, you can have a website up in 48 hours, assuming you have a prototype or some pictures you can make. There's obviously some intricacies and some others, but generally you can get some stuff done pretty cost effectively. And there are companies that help with all this stuff. And then you run a few Facebook ads. Now, tell you a little secret. This is why I don't usually record me saying this, but I'm going to take a chance and put this out there. There is a way to test your product in digital media, Facebook, Instagram, things like that, very cost effectively. And by that, I mean where you have very few products in inventory. So don't go buying 1,000 of your product or 3,000 units of your product because the factory tells you that's your minimum order quantity. And then you go stick it in a garage, and the next thing you know, you're still trying to get rid of this thing 10 years later. There are companies out there that have relationships that can run what we call a dry test, that will spend a few $1,000s, run some ads, and then when the person gets their email confirmation and when they place the order, the email confirmation says, "Thank you so much for ordering. Please be advised, we actually ran out of stock. We did not charge your credit card, but we will let you know when we're back in stock." And we got to do this very carefully because we don't want to piss people off, and we don't want to promote some, oops, sorry. We don't want to advertise things we don't actually have. But what we do want to do is get a read without dropping $1 million of stuff that's, like I said, we can't sell.
Mike, can I ask you a question?
Yeah, jump.
So is this sort of similar to what you might do if you were doing a Kickstarter?
Okay, great question. Here's the difference. Yes, it's similar in the sense that you're running something that's a pre-order. The difference is when I run the ads, if I'm running a Kickstarter, I am intentionally trying to raise money for something. I am telling people it's a pre-order. They're getting some sort of extra added bonus for being one of the first people to buy it. That's a different model. If I want to know if the masses want this thing, I have to run it without saying it's a pre-order, pre-sale, because you lose a ton of the audience that doesn't buy things that aren't available. So this is how we know they're actually putting in a credit card and they're actually really going to buy this thing. So that's kind of why we do it that way. Not everybody does. The more expensive the product and the more I don't want to say confident, but if you have a survey that just blows me away, or for whatever reason you have that level of confidence, it's always better to get some inventory and fulfill orders and get some good reviews because people are going to post about it. But again, you don't want to break the bank. So it really comes down to what you can afford. You may find a manufacturer that says, you know what, I'll let you buy 100 units of this thing. It's going to be expensive, but not as expensive as buying 1,000, and you're okay with that. So those are options. And so so from there, we have a whole bunch of metrics that we look at when we run digital tests. I'll get into that in a few minutes as well. And based on those results, it tells you if you should change your strategy, throw it in the garbage, or blow this thing up. One of the interesting things is if you're able to do this yourself, maybe again, you have the means and the ability to set up your own website, run a few Facebook ads, and get a pulse. If you bring those results to a licensing company and those are good results, you have leverage in terms of your negotiating when you're looking for your licensing deal, way more than, again, somebody who just knocks on the door and emails a picture of a prototype with no results. So that's something to keep in mind. Here's what's changed. All right. So looking where I wrote new model in the middle, it looks good. You get your digital test, you pick some of those, you go run a TV test, meaning you run commercials. And by the way, we're in an age now where not everything's obviously going to TV. I understand that. But what would happen is they would run TV tests, and then some of those would move forward. And the ones that move forward usually are making millions of dollars. The ones that don't move forward, thanks, will pass by. So what's changed? What's changed is we're in a different age now where there are a lot of channels where people can buy stuff, and you don't have to have a $50 million winner. You can go make a few $100,000 or $1 million or whatever, potentially, yourself, or even with companies that are willing to just sell on Amazon or just sell on TikTok or whatever. So what's changed now is just because something fails, in your first Facebook test or your first TV test, doesn't mean you're done. It just might mean it's smaller. Maybe it's not mass market. Maybe you have something niche, or maybe you have something that's going to be amazing, like I said, on Amazon. Fire away.
Mike, I got a question here on chat. It came from Jason. He asked, what does the 5,000 mean next to the review submissions? Is that how many submissions you get per year?
I'm using an average. I mean, sometimes I'll get 3,000 and sometimes 10,000, but I'm basically saying for every 5,000 submissions, roughly 2,000 go to survey. 3,000 I already know, or the team already knows right out of the gate, we're not even going to look at this. We've already seen this exact product 10 times, or it's already, for whatever reason, there's a filtering out process, or it's too niche. And I'm not just talking for myself. I'm saying the licensing companies, this is about the regular stat. People are, submitting stuff all day long, and they already know what percentage aren't going to make it to survey. Of the 2,000 surveys, you're talking 10% make it through the survey process and then become a digital test because of the feedback from the surveys. So my point is, these guys, the licensing companies are putting up 100% of their money. So they are really, really going to be picky. So know that going in, when and if you get rejected, at the end of the day, 5,000 submissions to 10 rollouts, pretty poor stats. But if you're one in the rollouts, you're talking about, like I said, millions of dollars usually. So that's what I meant by that. All right. Not going to go through this whole thing, but again, what I just want people to understand is that when people that are, I've talked to people and they're like, you know what, I'm not giving up my whole company. I want to do this myself. And I'm not saying no to that, because I've worked with many people that have done it themselves. But these are a small subset of bullets that you need to be prepared to have to deal with. Again, the market research and what the competition is and all the legal stuff, the design, the manufacturing, getting stuff. If you're manufacturing in another country, what does that look like? Freight forwarding, tariffs, warehouse, just a million things. Shooting assets. Is my website set up properly? Search ads, Google, this, that. So there's a million things. So that's why, most of the time people don't have either the funding or the know-how to do this. And so, it's a pleasure to give up, 97% of your company, because honestly, that could be 100 times the money you'd make if you try to do this yourself. So I just this is why people do that. Flip side, again, if you have the funding or you have investors or whatever it is, there's a lot of people like me out there that do know how to do this stuff, and we make for good partners in order to see this through without having to give up everything. So throw that out there. Another thing I like to keep in mind, there was a time, and we're only going back 5, 6, 7 years, where companies that would take your product, again, licensing companies or whomever, there was a shelf life, a life cycle to your product, because at a certain point, everybody had the thing, right? Whether it's the Snuggie or one of my other things that I've launched, and Snuggie is an anomaly. That one just happened to stay rocking for like 8 to 10 years for some crazy reason. But I would say 90% of the products prior to the last 5 years that I launched had seen 90% of their revenue in the first 2 years. And that's just a saturation thing, because the amount of money spent to advertise this thing to the masses was amazing. And everybody who's going to have this thing had this thing. Like you mentioned, the bacon bowl. We blew this thing out. Everyone's got the thing. It's not like you throw it out, you keep the thing forever, and eventually you're saturated. But that's changed as well, where we've all learned how to turn these things into brands and really extend the lives of these things. And now, we're not looking at these things as products anymore. We're looking at as brands. So if you bring something that is, an apparatus that's going to help you put on your sneakers, what's another one that's going to help with women's line of shoes, and what's another one that's going to help with athletic sneakers and things like that. So we keep trying to find ways to extend the life and not just call this a one and done product. So I'm going to run through these pretty quick, but I'll give you an example. This is a survey this was a product of, that would help people put their socks on. If you were elderly, couldn't bend over, injured, even we heard from, pregnant, women that were far along in their pregnancies, if they had trouble, this was like a device to help you just slide your sock on. And we had no idea if this is going to do well. We had the prototype. And so we put this on SurveyMonkey. We ran a survey, we put out a bunch of questions, and the response was absolutely amazing. I'll make a very important point here. When you do surveys or any of these kinds of things, you want to make sure you don't go too narrow in your audience targeting. What I mean by that is, I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, all right, the average age of someone who needs this is probably 80 and up. So let me go advertise this to 80-year-olds and so forth. Well, I might miss a huge market there. So what I always say is hit everyone. I don't mean like, you have an eyeliner, you're gonna hit women in this category. And even then, you don't know. So don't try to guess the category and the audience too much. A perfect example of this is years ago, I was advertising die-cast collectible cars, like 2-3 inch little cars that you put up on a shelf. And the people that were buying them out of the catalog, same thing, 75, 80, 85-year-old men were collecting these old-fashioned 1940 Cadillacs. And so when we went to go to TV, we're like, all right, we got to hit the stations with the oldest group that caters to men. And then we had this idea to scrap that and just hit the mass and just see and learn. And the biggest audience became 40-year-old women. And we were like, why in the world do 40-year-old women want to buy old-fashioned cars? Well, because we found out they were buying them for their dads. And that's a demographic we would have missed, totally blown it, and it totally changed the advertising. So very important, don't go too narrow. Next. So that did really well, that sock slider device. So now we want to go digital. Again, we only had the prototype, so we shot a little iPhone video and made this down and dirty looking website. Now, back when I originally made this slide, like a few years back, we were sending out emails. The average person doesn't have a house full of 683,000 emails at their disposal, but anybody can just literally go to Facebook and run an ad. There's nothing to it. You can watch a video on YouTube for free on how to do this. You can spend $50. But there's a way, again, to run some ads and just get a pulse. So you run ads, and if anybody after this is like needs help, I have people to refer you to or suggestions, because I'm not expecting everybody to get off this call and suddenly go to their iPhone and start creating and running Facebook and Instagram ads. I'm just telling you that this is kind of the process, that if you don't do it, a licensing company that's considering working with you, this is what they do. So you run this, and we're looking at how many people viewed it and clicked on it, and those who clicked, how many purchased, and all this interesting stuff. And these numbers tell us if we should move on, scrap it, or change the messaging. For that example, it did great for us again. So now we're like, all right, we got to go to TV here. This thing's a home run. So now we go to a production company. We shoot a full-blown TV commercial. And by the way, an average TV commercial that is selling a product is 2 minutes long, 120 seconds, until it's been in the marketplace for like months, where we feel that enough people have seen it, and we will start to show 30-second commercials as reminders. We'll show 1-minute commercials too, just to get on air. But the studies have shown that if you show a 30-second or 15-second commercial right out of the gate, where you want someone to put in a credit card, it's not long enough to tell a story to get someone to stop and make an impulse purchase. So 2 minutes is the magic number. 60 seconds, you can sprinkle those in to support it. But that's the magic. Later, if you're in like Walmart and retail stores, yeah, 15-second, 30-second commercial that says available at retail stores is fine. But anyway, we shot a commercial, put it on TV, and once again, this thing did amazing. I have a million examples that I won't do today of failures, but I'm just showing you again what the process looks like for the ones that move forward. And I won't dive into the math, but again, I want you guys to know what goes on behind the scenes. So this is an example of, go ahead, Doug.
Yeah, so I was going to ask, in the prior slide, it said soft, hard.
Oh yeah, I'll hit that.
What's that about?
Okay. So soft offer, hard offer, trial offer, and there's others. A soft offer is a commercial or a video where you don't see the price. They do not disclose the price. So you'll see a commercial and it says, go online to whatever to find out more. That is really common with products that are usually, let's call it, over $100. Maybe $69.95, $79.95. But the more expensive, the less people try to smack you in the face with a price. So they just want to get you to the phone or get you to the website. So it's called a soft offer. Hard offer is what you see here, where I'm hitting you with the $19.99 right on the screen. Trial offer is where you don't say the price, but you'll say, find out how you can get your free trial. And then when you go to the website, we might charge you like $5 for shipping. Let's say it's like a supplement, like a monthly shipping supplement. And so we'll get you for whatever, $5 shipping. And then after 30 days, it's going to renew $30 a month until you cancel. That's a trial offer. There's multi-pay offers, as you've seen, you know, yours now for only 3 payments of whatever. So those are all examples. As I said, I won't go too into the weeds with this, but this is an example of what a TV report high level looks like. And it just shows you how much we spent, how many orders we got on the phones, how many on the website. And then right down to the station level, like, oh, on Fox News, we spent almost $11,000 to get 247 calls and blah, blah. I know how to read these, so this will tell me, wow, okay, this station did really well. This station did poorly. Maybe we don't want to run on the station anymore, or maybe we want to, you know, try the station at a different time of day. So again, I'm not showing this so that you memorize this. I'm showing this so that you realize the stuff that's behind the scenes. And for every one of these, there's 100 different ones that look similar, but on social media. Here's the Facebook ad I ran. Here's the headline. Here was the video. Here's the audience. Here's how many clicks. Here's who purchased. These crazy detailed metrics, right down to what device were they on, because maybe my ad did great on a desktop computer, but it did horribly on mobile. So I got to deal with that. All these things are built into the background that people are looking at. Again, just to find out if you have something. And for those where it's also involving a telemarketing situation, whether it's customer service or, you know, call 1-800 and somebody goes to call a phone operator, we write all these scripts and we study and, you know, test different verbiage so that the person reading, you know, trying to make the sale knows what to say. Website examples for you. Again, you guys know what websites look like, obviously, but, you know, for products and things like that, it's very important to have the whole features and benefits on there. And then usually we try to get into upsells. So, you know, you never want to, you can sell just one product. That's great. But even in that situation, we're obviously trying to convince people to buy more than one. So you love it. Your family's going to love it. Buy more and save, all those kinds of things to increase, you know, how much the average person spends. Again, I'm showing you TV commercials. I know we're in a different age right now. I will also tell you, though, in the world of streaming and in my house, you know, we're not on regular cable anymore. I'm fully cut the cord, you know, YouTube TV and Netflix and Prime Video and all that stuff. But a lot of these still have commercials. And so this stuff does apply. So even testing what we put at the end of a commercial, a website, a phone number. Now you got QR codes. I have that in every commercial I run. Good stuff. And then, you know, what we look for, like what's working, how much can we spend? Are there new TV stations to test? Are there new social media channels to test? Is our thing right for TikTok? And if you guys don't know and you haven't seen it yet, assuming TikTok stays around, which I think it will, there's a thing now called TikTok Shop, where you can have your own TikTok channel and do whatever you want on there, and you can put products up, and it's actually pretty easy to upload pictures of your product and all your product details. And the next thing you know, you can work commission arrangements where other people on TikTok are selling your product. They've made it so easy, it's crazy. All right, another fun thing for any of you finance people out there, make sure you understand. By the way, I'm going to back up a minute. Most of you guys, if you just have a prototype, you don't have to know any of this stuff. This is, again, me giving you a behind the scenes on what the licensing companies and other companies will do. This is all the studying we did before I even got back to someone, an inventor, and said, this is great, we're moving forward, or we're going to pass. There's 1,000 things of homework I have to do, not just do people like it. Yeah.
Yeah, I was wondering if you could say a few words about the difference between CPO and MER. I'm not familiar with the terms.
You got it. Where did I just have that? Oh, yeah. Okay, sure. So CPO is cost per order. How much does it cost to acquire a customer, to get an order? Real simply, what that means is if I run an advertisement, let's just say I run whether it's a TV commercial, let's just call it a TV commercial, but it applies to anything. and let's say that TV commercial on Fox News costs $100. If I only get one order, that the CPO, the cost per that one order was $100. If I get two orders, it's a $50 cost per order. The more orders I get, the lower the CPO, and that's what we were looking for, the lowest possible CPO. So for something like on this screen where it says 3 easy payments of $49.95, that's a $150 item. So we're looking for a CPO that's probably $100 or less. So for every $100 we spend on ads, we better find at least one order or we have a problem. I'll do MER in a minute. But the thing about that is, and that goes back to sort of that TV report, we might spend, 1,000 orders and we want $1,000, and we're hoping to see 10 orders. But we look at the report and we're like, you know what? The telephone operators they did terribly. They had like 200 phone calls and only got one order. So maybe it's not the product. Maybe the script wasn't good. Maybe I got to train my phone reps better. Or maybe the website had 5,000 visitors and 3 orders. Again, might not be the product's fault. Maybe the website's a disaster. It took too long to load. The pictures weren't working. The design's terrible. Oh, so that all gets looked at. MER, media efficiency ratio, or in the digital world, we call that ROAS, ROAS, which is return on ad spend. And that's a different metric, which is how much revenue did I make for every dollar I spent. So if I spend $100 on a commercial and I get $1,000 in sales, that's a 10-to-1 MER, or 10 times, we'll call it like a 10x. We'll look at it that way. And again, we have all these things where we're looking for these metrics to know if we should move forward. But as I said before, just because it doesn't hit the metrics doesn't mean we're going to stop. We're going to look at every single element along the way. Maybe we just priced it too high and we should have done 3 payments of $39.95. So we're not done just because it doesn't pass the initial test. And then on top of all that, I'm looking at a P&L. What is my profit margin for every order I send out before any advertising? So if you have a product that costs $100 and your cost of goods is $20, so I got an $80 profit margin, but I don't really, because I got to ship it to the customer. How much does shipping cost for that? And then on average, what's the return rate that I think? Is it an item that's like made of glass that I got to imagine the returns might be a little higher? Or is it something with sizes and SKU, all kinds of SKUs I got to worry about, and so forth. So, what kind of box is this going to be in? Do I need bubble wrap? All that stuff gets looked at as well to see what's my real profit margin. So let's say in this example that I'm showing you, actually, I don't have this. Well, I'll just make one up. So again, let's use our $100 product. But let's say on the $100 product, again, our cost of goods are $20 minus packaging and shipping and fulfillment. Let's say at the end of the day, I have a $50 profit margin. But let's say for that same product, the average person is buying more than one of them because it's one of these things where people want a lot of them. So maybe it's not really, it's a $100 item, but the average person is spending $200. So now let's call my profit margin, I don't know, we'll call it $80. All right, for easy math. What that tells me is my CPO better be $80 or less for me to break even or make money. And that's, again, the magic math that we look at. The one caveat I'll tell you to that is some of the licensing companies are willing to lose money on that. They'll spend $3 million on advertising costs and lose $1 million because their CPO is higher than their profit margin. But that's okay because they know in a few months they're going to be in every retail store in the country and everyone will have now seen this. And then it's going to be millions of dollars at that point forward. So they're willing to risk it and invest and lose money. Just about done. Okay. Again, I'm just telling you that if you think you're going to go on digital media and advertise these things, there's a million different channels. They're all important, whether you're doing email or you're on a social media or you got your banner ads. Influencers these days, I don't even have on here. There's so many other channels popping up every 5 minutes. Native ads are those type of ads like you're scrolling in the news feed online and all of a sudden you see what looks like news. Mark Wahlberg swears by this amazing supplement, but then those little tiny little thing that says, that's an advertisement, but it looks like a news story. That's a native ad, so on. So these are all things, again, I'm only talking about rollout. None of this stuff has to be done before you present to a licensing company or just to see if you have something viable. But, I'm repeating this multiple times on this call today, that you just need to know that if you're going to do something yourself, these are all of the things that everybody looks at when you go mass market and you want to try to really promote something. Some examples, I do a lot of work with a company called Air Doctor. It's an air purifier that launched literally a few years ago and is already doing $100 million. And their products are anywhere from $350. They have like $1,000 high-end model. It's amazing. But every one of these types of ads get tested. Different sizes, dimensions. One's a video, one of these you're not going to see unless you've already seen the other one. And all these strategies are built into the back end. Bottom left, by the way, just another thing. I wrote CPA there. So it's similar to like what I said before, CPO, cost per order. CPA is cost per acquisition. The difference here is there are actual companies out there, if they believe in your product, they would be willing to spend the money themselves on running ads for you, and you just pay them a commission, like a fixed cost per acquisition. So you can say, hey, XYZ digital agency, I'll give you $20 for every order you sell. Some will say, no, you got to pay us this much. Others will say, yes, that's a model too. Okay, a few more things. All right. So again, price testing, really important. You might think that your product is perfectly priced at $20 or $200 or $1,000, but we don't really know. So we got to run a lot of tests. And by tests, I just mean different ads, different landing pages on your website, and play around with it. Maybe I can add shipping, or maybe free shipping is going to do better. Buy one, get one free, all these things. Creative testing. What am I? Oh, it does that. Why, what messaging is going to make this thing pop the most? I talked about the audience before. Maybe I think it's older men, maybe it's younger women, so forth. And then upsells. You get somebody to purchase, you want to hit them, and all the websites now, Shopify, WooCommerce, all these websites do this now, Wix, where you can, on the way out, while they're like on their checkout process, thank you for your order. Before you go, would you like to add another one? Would you like to add our deluxe model and all these things? So these are other ways where you can upsell, things like that. I'll show you this quick example. So I mentioned before I sold something called Magic Mesh, which was massive. And then in the middle, this thing says control. The control is what our website was for years. It said, every time you clicked on it, it would say, would you like to upgrade and get 30% stronger magnets and with our deluxe version? And we showed a little picture like you see right there. It says upgrade to the deluxe. And only 10% of the people did that. And we wanted them to do that. We made a lot more money when they upgraded to our deluxe version. So then we did this little test. We got rid of that picture and we went on the right where it says test. And right near the order add to cart button on the homepage, we slapped this little thing, this checkbox that says upgrade my order with 30% stronger magnets, only $5 more per screen. And 67% of the people checked that box. In a million years, I would have never guessed that. I would have thought the picture with the huge word deluxe and stronger would have done it. This thing beat it. So that's why, again, we don't try to guess. We just test things. If it works, we keep it. If it doesn't, we go back to the regular website. All right, last couple of slides. Point here being, don't just rely on all the channels, TV and websites and stuff. There's home shopping. We got podcasts now as a big thing. Amazon, I could spend hours talking about. I won't today, but it's a beast. And then I mentioned before streaming, right? It's expensive to advertise on streaming, but that is changing very quickly. Amazon best practice. I'm not going to spend time on this today. If you guys want to screenshot this, knock yourself out. But this is kind of like what a best practice Amazon page looks like, where it's got the descriptions at the bottom and the nice artwork and all that kind of stuff. And as I mentioned in one of my earlier slides, just because you have a product and everyone wants it doesn't mean you're done. You can have add-ons. The Air Doctor started out with a small little air purifier. 3 years later, we have 2 new ones and all kinds of different filters. We had a supplement that was a powder scoop for getting all your fruits and veggies in your diet. And then we added a bar blowing out. So again, we're always thinking about what the next thing is. And that, my friends, takes us to 6:01, so close. I'm open to questions, please. Again, here's my contact information. I will be clear about a couple things. So again, I've been in this business a long time. I have my hands full on the personally funding investing side. So these days, typically, I will personally either take your sell sheet or your product and present it for you. I know everyone at all the best companies, they will take my phone call and my email in 3 seconds, and I will know how to present and handle all that free, whatever. I'm just happy to do that anytime I think I see something great. Or separately, I'm available. I'm like a hire for service. If somebody actually wanted to move forward with their brand and they needed some guidance, I'm like your outsourced chief marketing officer, right-hand man. So just want to make that clear before I'm not just, I'm getting hit with 10,000 friends and everybody's idea and crayon on a napkin. That's where we are. All right. What do we got?
Yeah, so Mike, I wanted to ask, do you regard yourself as a licensing agent at this point?
I do less of that. I really call myself a fractional CMO because, like, or chief marketing officer, because more often these days, a lot of the companies I work with we're either just funded or they're larger and they need somebody to come in and really take their whole, everything you saw, I'll do from A to Z, as well as maximize the sales, even when something's been a brand for years. So more of the companies I've been working with are post-funding, but the licensing agent is like, I'm doing it as a favor because I love it. And again, I have the best relationships in the business.
Very cool. Are there any questions? Well, hearing none, I want to I hope everyone will join me in thanking the speaker. Thank you, Michael. It's been terrific. I think it's been thoroughly enjoyed. Yeah, you got a question? No questions? All right.
Yes. Yeah. Hi, how are you? This is Ian.
Good.
Thank you very much. This was extremely informative. Two sides. One is professionally, I work in more of like a service capacity, but personally, if I wanted to engage a group because I had an amazing product that I wanted to bring to market, it sounds like you're not there either. Like you would need a bigger company, a bigger amount of cash flow to get somebody like you involved.
No, and I'm glad you asked that. So I'll clarify. Anybody can send me. I get product submissions every single week coming from everywhere. So, and by that I mean a prototype, a picture, whatever it is, a sell sheet, like I showed in the beginning, with no sales, nothing. I will look at that anytime, all day long, and I have all of the right people to present that to for you. So don't hesitate at any point. I'm happy to sign an NDA. No issue there, whatever. For me to be engaged, like if you're like, listen, I'm going to need you to shoot here's the prototype. I need you to shoot video, set up a website for me, run advertising. I do that all day long. And that's a service for hire and I'm flexible. Yeah, I hope that answers. So I'll do either extreme, but don't think not to send me something because you're too concerned that I need you to be further along. I'd rather just tell you it's not for me, but then you miss an opportunity or me miss one.
Wonderful. Yes. Thank you very much.
You got it.
Michael, thank you. This is Dan. If I can ask a question.
Yeah.
Yeah. Great presentation. Question about licensing. When you want to bring a brand in, like you talk about that, like if product X would be a multiplier better if it had a association with a known brand, how does that work?
So it depends what you mean. If you mean like you have your own brand, that's not a known name, but you want to bring the whole brand to a licensing company, which could then later be, I guess, added to an existing brand. Is that what you're saying?
Something that when you put a Star Wars label on it or something,
Yeah.
it makes it. Yeah. Well, how does that work?
Similar. Again, I've run advertising with a ton of products that said Sharper Image on it. And it wasn't Sharper Image at all. I paid like $4 a unit to use their name, which they agreed. Yeah, I'm just giving you one example. Yeah, I mean, it works the same way. You would present it. There's companies out there that this is what they do. I go to Disney, I'll go to this, I'll go to that company, or it's a hair care product, I'll go to a hair company. and find out if there's some opportunity in there. So it's a little bit more tricky because most of them, again, are looking for something a little further along. But, you know, as a follow-up, you're welcome to elaborate and send me anything you want. And as I mentioned before, I'll never have an issue signing an NDA, so that's fine.
Great. Thank you.
Oh, let me stop sharing, by the way.
Well, if there's no other questions, I want to, I hope everyone will join me in thanking the speaker. Mike, great having you back. I'll have this video up and posted to you, and if you're okay with it, we'll post it to the website.
You got it. No problem at all. And anyone's, like I said, my contact info is there. You're welcome to reach out.
Thanks everybody for attending. We'll have a speaker next month, but I'm not sure who it is yet because I'm still trying to arrange the details. Have a good evening, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, Michael.
Thank you.